This is Robin with Horror Pop After Midnight. I'm at GalaxyCon Columbus, and I'm talking to writer Travis Langley. How's it going, Travis?
It's going well.
So, what's some of your latest books you've been working on?
Latest. For next year, we're working on one about The Handmaid's Tale. The most recent to come out would be the second edition of the Doctor Who book. The first edition had been Doctor Who Psychology, a Madman with a Box, but that subtitle no longer applies. The second edition is Doctor Who Psychology Times Change. Earlier this year had Spider-Man Psychology, Untangling Webs, and right before that was We Look at Stranger Things.
So, what got you into writing psychology of all the favorite pulp culture out there?
That is a longer story than it should be. The simplest thing would simply be that I'd had an idea about a book on Batman. And if you're going to write about the psychology of a superhero and his enemies, you start with Batman. He has issues. And then after that book did so well, other psychologists and therapists wanted to join me. So on the others, I would be editor, lead writer, head nerd of the herd, with trauma experts, child psychologists, family relationship experts, depending on what topic we're talking about at the time.
So, what was one of the hardest books you had to do on the psychology part of it?
On the psychology side of it, I know, it's like I can feel giving you a bunch of silence. We don't tend to take on the ones that would be hardest. Now, there's some I had to think longer on. Wonder Woman psychology. For a while, people kept saying, "Would you do a book on Wonder Woman?" It's like, she's healthy. You know, Batman has his problems. It's easy to say, but then it occurred to me, well, write a book on the psychology of the mentally healthy hero. Talk about positive psychology. Talk about the better side of human nature. And she was created by a psychologist. Dr. William Moulton Marston, often called the inventor of the lie detector, which is not completely accurate, but not completely wrong either. And he gives her a lasso to make people tell the truth. So the first few chapters relate his approach to psychology of the stories, and then we go into the others. That was the one I had to think about the longest. When we get to the psychology side of it, by the time we're working on them, we have figured it out. So it's not as hard while we're working on them. There have been a few that we'd batted around that just decided, no, I just don't see enough depth or enough variety in the psychology to do that one.
So, what have been other subjects that you're thinking about doing psychology that you didn't get a chance to touch on?
Well, if I say them, somebody might go out and slap something together, and I've had that happen before. There are certain big things that are still out there that I do want to talk about. It's a matter of what's interesting to me that can bring real psychology to, with some variety from things we've already talked about, and then that we can convince the publisher it's the right time to do it. Like, for example, The Last of Us would be so much fun to write about. But what's in The Last of Us that we haven't already explored somewhere else, such as in The Walking Dead psychology? There are some issues. I do know some things we could get into with The Last of Us, but I'm still not sure there's enough. People repeatedly ask about Deadpool. Yeah, that would be fun to write about. Of course you could do a book on Deadpool, but I don't really think there would be enough variety in what we could talk about in terms of both the psychology and the stories. Most people don't know that many Deadpool stories. You've got a couple of movies, you've got some appearances here and there, and he talks to the fourth wall in the comics, and he's had many, many stories, but most people don't know the stories. And so there's some limits there on what we could do. The Punisher's another one. People have said, would you do a book on the Punisher? It's like, of course you can talk about the Punisher. Do a Punisher chapter in my Daredevil book. But it's another one where, okay, there are these certain things we can say about the Punisher, and then what? What do you do for the rest of it? So it's also a matter of what brings enough variety in the psychology, in the character history, and the Punisher has plenty of stories in his history. Deadpool has plenty of stories, but not that they're as well known. If we're spending a lot of time having to explain the stories to the reader, we're not getting to spend as much time on the psychology. Of course, there's some. I never assume anybody remembers all the details, but there's still a different degree to which have to, how much of this Walking Dead story do you have to explain? How much of the Spider-Man story do you have to explain, as opposed to a Punisher story that very few people know?
So where can everybody find you on social media to check out these great books?
I am one of the 10 most followed psychologists on Twitter, whatever Twitter is worth these days. Honestly, Facebook is one of the best places to communicate. I've got Instagram and others, but Facebook is one of the best places to communicate with me. Facebook Messenger is more reliable than my email.
All right, thank you for coming out of your busiest time to have this quick interview with me.
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed it.